Okay, we're going to look at drawing the head and in particular the proportions of the head. So let's take a look here. Where these proportions come from, they come from Leonardo da Vinci. And he used the golden proportion, the golden mean, to, in essence, figure out all of these different relationships and proportions to the whole body. So these kind of relate to the head. Now, he goes into a lot of detail. We're just going to kind of touch on the essence of what he's talking about here. So the first proportion that I want you to be familiar with is this head shape, and that the eyes are halfway down the head if you're looking straight on at somebody's face. Okay, so and this is a common misconception. I think as children we tend to put the eyes higher on the head, and we don't account for hair and things like that. But you can take any person, any magazine photo, and measure that their eyes should be exactly halfway down the head. So you've got one half here and one half here. Once you've got that basic eye proportion mapped out, maybe you put these sort of upper eyelids on, then we can start to think about some other divisions here. And then those are the thirds. Now, the confusing part here is that it's not necessarily related to the half and the half. These are separate measurements. And you can measure yourself. So from the bottom of the chin to the bottom of the nose should be the same between the bottom of the nose and the eyebrows. And then the eyebrows to the hairline. Now, of course, if you're missing hair, that top third is a little bit tougher to sort of figure out. Okay. And then there are certain landmarks of the head. So if you take the tear ducts straight down, you get the nose. Also, the big measurement here with the eyes is that there's exactly one eye in between your eyes. And they also say that a head is 5 eyes wide. So you could put 5 eyes and fit them perfectly in the head. Just like so. So to find the nose, you've got to go straight down from the tear ducts and you get the nostrils. If you take from the pupil straight down, you get pretty close to the lip line. The lip line used to really confuse me a lot. I always, in this bottom third here, would tend to put the lips in the middle of that, right in here. That's inaccurate. Really, what you want to look for is that this lip line is 1/3 and then 2/3 this way. Or that lower lip or that cleft in the chin, that is the halfway point on this bottom third. Okay, another helpful hint here, if you take this middle third straight over, you'll find the ear fits perfectly in there. And the interesting thing is, once I had a student say, well, an older person, they usually have bigger noses. The reason for that is that your cartilage never really stops growing. So as your nose continues to grow, so do your ears. So you still basically fit within that same proportion. So that's your head. Now, let me see here for a second. Let's see if I can apply this here. So if I'm going to sketch this head here, let's see how this works. Let's give myself a little halfway line. And let's start with the bottom of the head, the top of the head. And let's just give it that basic egg shape right here. And nothing too fancy. Okay. And this feels weird already, and I've done this so many times, but the eyes are halfway down. Okay. And you want to say that over and over again. The eyes are halfway down. And I usually just give myself that upper eyelid. Okay? So now, once I found my eyes, and I can give them a little pupil there, nothing too fancy. What I tend to do is I sort of guess, where could this nose be? And I'm going to guess right now it's probably going to be maybe right in there. And then I can kind of measure, okay? So let's take a measurement here, and let's say, is this 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3? I think I'm going to be pretty close. So let's do a third of measurement. And the eyebrows. Okay. And I think this is fairly close. So this distance is going to equal this distance, which would equal this distance. And I think I'm fairly close. So I can put this nose on, and I tend to just put a little line for the nose. You can do a little U, let's see, and then like open parentheses, close parentheses. And I will almost never draw like these lines here. But tear duct straight down, find that nostril. Okay, eyebrows are going to be right in there. Okay, ears, right in here. And that mouth. So this is the halfway point. That's going to be the lower lip. And then I'm going to get this M shape for the upper lip. Little philtrum. So it kind of looks like an M. That upper lip, lower lip, and chin, and maybe some hair. Little sideburn. Okay, jawline. And so I've got basically the proportions of the head, okay, on a straight on view. And then I've got maybe a little neck coming down. Okay, so there's my straight on view using Leonardo's proportions. Let's go back here to some more landmarks of the head. And let's keep going here. So now with the profile of the head, looking at the head sideways, the proportions are, they just transfer over. So your eyes are still halfway down. There's still these thirds. Okay. The different thing now is that we've got to figure out the depth of the head. Okay. So one way to do that is to think of it as a square. Now notice the square doesn't include the top of the head. But if we divide that square in half, we have the ear. Now there's usually a slight little angle to the ear, but this gives us a really general measurement. Okay, so let's see if I can go back here to my drawing, and let's see if I can figure out this profile view. So my square is going to be, let's try it right about here. So I think I might be sort of pushing it more towards a rectangle, but let's see how it works out. Okay. All right, so there's my basic square shape. Now if I divide this square into half, then I'm going to get this ear. Okay, and that's an easy way to find that. So my top of the head is still going to be here, And what I like to do is just sort of think of this face here, the profile, as just a nice curl, a nice curve, and jawline going to come up. And let's see if I can get the back of the head, neck. Okay, and then my eye is going to be right about in here. Okay. And then I've got this little dip, grow the nose out, nostril, and then these are sort of like reverse stair steps maybe. Let's see. And lip pops out, chin, okay, eyebrow. All right, and maybe a little bit of hair, sideburn, neck. Feels to me like he needs a little bit more back of the head here, but this gives you a real basic sort of way of looking at the proportions of the head. So I'm just going from memory here. If I was drawing from a model, I could use these same sort of proportions to see how they go. So let's go back here to the PowerPoint. And it's a little better drawing here. And here's Leonardo da Vinci's drawings from his notebook. And they get very complicated. He's got his famous backwards handwriting that we see in a lot of things here. There's a lot of theories behind why would he do that. Maybe he was like writing with his left hand and drawing with his right hand. Another theory that I kind of like is that he was sort of hiding what he was doing from the church, like or quote stupid people couldn't really figure out what he was doing. Just this crazy old guy doing science, trying to kind of keep it hidden because at that time they were dissecting a lot of bodies and doing a lot of science with bodies, and of course the church wouldn't have appreciated that at this time. It's remember what the church said to Galileo. Galileo said, "Oh, the Earth is round and it rotates. It goes around the sun." And the church said, "No, it doesn't." And Galileo said, "Here, look through my telescope." And the church said, "No, it doesn't. Do you want to go to jail?" And Galileo said, "Yeah, you're right. I don't want to go to jail." So this was like very taboo to study this and to study anatomy and a lot of science at this time. So maybe some of that backwards handwriting sort of attributes to, well, just let Leonardo do his thing. So here's some of his drawings here, and they're fantastic and go into a ton of detail on the proportions of the head and the human body. And then, of course, we've got the most famous painting of all time. And I think everyone will agree upon that. It's no matter what age you are, you always sort of say the Mona Lisa. And one of the questions is, and it's really kind of an underwhelming painting if you ever get to see it in person. You can't get up close to it. It's at the Louvre in Paris, and it's quite small. But we still marvel at this portrait of Mona Lisa, and it's interesting because she doesn't even have eyebrows, for that matter. There's a lot of conspiracy behind this painting. A lot has been written about it and studied about it. But one of the things that captures my attention is, why is it so famous to this day? Why do we still revel in this painting? And there are a lot of theories to that. People will say, well, it's got all this history behind it, or whoever sat for it. I think they did finally track down who sat for this portrait. It never really got to the sitter, and back then you couldn't necessarily FedEx it to somebody. You had to literally ship it. And Leonardo had a bad habit of not finishing paintings. I think he only finished like 8 paintings in his whole career. He was just so busy inventing things. But here back to Mona Lisa, why is this so famous? Is it that certain look on her face? I think one of the things that hits me is that what is she exactly feeling? For the first time in art history, we get a painting of someone, and we really don't care necessarily who it is. I mean, is it a saint? Is it a religious figure? Is it a king or a queen or somebody of nobility? I think for the first time, we don't think of that. We think of, well, what is she feeling? What is she thinking? And so Leonardo has ingeniously, for the first time in art history, made us think of the psyche of the sitter. What is that subtle little gaze? What is that subtle little curl in her lips? And we can't put our fingers on it. It's an emotion. It's abstract. We can't put it into words. And he's really put that to the test. But if we look at this compositionally, one of the things that is really interesting, she tends to follow you around the room. So by that I mean, look at her shoulders. So her shoulders are tilted and she's encompassing this whole side of the room, drawing in that room. It's almost like the sculptures at the Haunted Mansion in Disneyland, right? The eyes following you around. And now look at her head. It's almost right straight at us, and it's pulling in this side of the room. And then, of course, look at her eyes, pulling in this side. So like 180 degrees, we've seen her draw in the entire room, which is really kind of an interesting pull in, an interesting way of drawing us in, making it look very sort of three-dimensional. And then, of course, look at Leonardo's technique. He's got this wonderful sfumato, which translates to smoke-like. Doesn't have an edge. Everything is really well blended. Nothing's very sharp. And her face is really subtle. We can tell where the light's coming from up above. We see these cast shadows from the nose, from the chin, dark upper lip, dark eye sockets, really dark, and really nice source of light and shadow to make it feel dimensional. Okay, so you can study some of Leonardo's paintings further, his drawings, and check out some of his proportions. These are just really basic head proportions to help you out, to help you get going, and to see where you go with them. Okay? Thanks.